I am Marianne Christensen, and I'm with Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services, which we are the host agency for this year's Utah Elder Justice Conference. And I want to welcome you to this session. It's titled Welcome Home, Creating Spaces of Safety, Connection, and Engagement for Refugee Seniors. So we have Sarah Jordan here today, and I'm just going to turn the time to her. But one little technical thing, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can see the presenters if you click on participants. But we'll also be using the Q&A. If you have any questions, just feel free to type your questions in the Q&A and we'll address those at the end. So we'll turn the time to Sarah and you can introduce yourself.
Well, hi, everybody. I have no idea who's here. It's really weird, this virtual world. But I'm Sarah Jordan. I'm the fairly new Senior Refugee Outreach Coordinator for Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services. And it's really, it is a pleasure to be here and to share some of the work that we've been doing for the last 4 years. And I'm hoping to leave a good amount of time for not just questions, but maybe some dialogue or discussion, ideas. Many of you have had experience, and I would love to have you share. And with that, I'll go ahead and get into the presentation. Okay, oops, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to start off with, with some definitions. Okay, you guys, this is a little weird because I'm seeing something else in my screen. I hope you can't see that. Okay, so what is a refugee? And there's a lot in the news about refugees, asylees, immigrants, migrants, and a whole lot of other terms related to people moving across the globe and across the country. A refugee is a term. A refugee is a noun, and it's a term. It's a legal term that means somebody who has fled their country, who is now in another country, who is requesting refugee status in a third country. And the legal UN definition includes a well-founded fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. The other thing that's important to know about refugees, in contrast to asylees, is that refugees are eligible for settlement benefits, which means that the host country will provide financial support for that person to come to the new country and to get established here. That support is important. An asylee, and we have a lot of those right now, at the southern border of the United States, is someone who has left their country but now is requesting asylee at the border. They can also request in their home country. And then also eligible for some support, but not all of the support that refugees are eligible for with resettlement. Okay, I want to share a story. This is a story of someone local who came to Utah and was working with Utah Health and Human Rights, which is a local organization that works specifically with people that have come as refugees and have experienced torture or abuse. It's a phenomenal program. It's one of our partners, and we're really grateful to have them here in Utah. Mohammed has a story that is in some ways typical, I'm sad to say, and that is that he was working in his home country of Sudan, and during the Civil War, he was ordered by a militia to assassinate a politician who opposed the government. So that first part is really important for his refugee status. So that was a political, he was afraid of persecution on the basis of something political. He refused, and when he refused, the militia retaliated by forcing him to witness the murders of his wife and children. After they burned his house to the ground, he fled. So that's the second part there. He fled, he left. And then he crossed multiple borders going to multiple countries and ended up in a third country in a refugee camp. There applied to UNHCR, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, for refugee status. And after many, many, many years of waiting, he was resettled to Utah. This is a little graphic here. It's a little wonky, but the phases of forced displacement. So just to kind of keep this whole process in your head, there is some kind of event that occurs in a country. Usually it's it becomes internationally recognized as a major event. It could be war, it could be increasingly natural disaster we're seeing that is forcibly displacing people, or some kind of other situation. Then people have to flee. That's an option for some people. Some people don't feel like it is, but people flee. Then they are displaced, and they can be internally displaced in their home country, or they leave their country's national borders, and go to another country. And while they're displaced in that process, typically there's the loss of so much that we'll talk more about. Then oftentimes people do end up in some kind of a refugee camp. This is the Kakuma camp in Kenya. It's one of the largest in the world. We have a lot of refugees in Utah that have come through the Kakuma camp. And there people can apply for resettlement. But once in the camp, and people can be there for a long time, folks have to make a decision. What are they going to do? Are they going to return home? Are they going to go to maybe outside the camp, but to stay in the country that they're in, or resettle in a third country? Okay, so what does the situation look like around the globe? I put here mapping the world's refugee population. The three biggest conflicts right now of folks that have been displaced: Syria, Venezuela, and Afghanistan. But as you'll see, those numbers don't exactly jive in the same way with the numbers of folks who are becoming refugees and resettled in the United States. And that's because a lot of folks are internally displaced, like Syria, or large populations are being hosted by other countries. So for example, in Syria, there are a lot of people living in Lebanon, in other nearby countries. Same with Venezuela, which are the top two. By the end of 2019, over 80 million people had been forcibly displaced in the world. Interestingly, by middle of last year, about 12% were over the age of 60, and that is what the UN designation is for an older refugee, over the age of 60. And also, older female refugees outnumber male refugees for lots of different reasons. But that's something to pay attention to in terms of considering what needs are, and then also later on when folks are resettled, what people's situation is. Okay, so who is on the move? This is specifically in the United States, and we'll just look here for a minute at the top 5. This is through 2018, so you'll see here that the top countries of folks that have been resettled in the United States are Myanmar or Burma, Iraq, Somalia, Bhutan, and then the Democratic Republic of the Congo is 5th. But interestingly, as of 2019, folks from the DRC or the Congo took the #1 spot for folks resettled to the United States, followed by Myanmar, then Ukraine, Eritrea, and Afghanistan. And this is just, don't worry about the details here, but just to give you a kind of a visual about, since 1975, with Vietnam, we started seeing large influxes, a large influx of people from Vietnam. But just notice the patterns here, and then look at Utah. So if we go here, 2010, this is Utah 2009, you'll see the dips and the rises, and that follows a similar trajectory. What's happening in the United States is also happening in Utah. As of 2018, or in 2018, there were 366 folks who were resettled in Utah. 2019, 463. Last year, fewer than 200. This year, so far, things have been very delayed, and as of the end of last month, there had only been 8, but now with the new designation by the Biden administration, we're expecting to see between about 500 and 600 folks resettled in Utah. The average is 1,100 to 1,200 a year. Okay, and most are in Salt Lake County, including Joe. So this is Joe Nahas, and he is a friend of ours. He works for the Refugee Service Office, DWS, for the state. And Joe has talked a lot about the transition. And this article was in the Deseret News quite a while ago, but it just really kind of struck me. He says, you come with high hopes. You think language will be your only problem. And once you get here, language goes down the list. And that is so true of all refugees, and especially our older refugees. And many, many challenges. And when folks get here, on the one hand, people are really happy to be in a safe place, but oftentimes folks can feel rejected um, or frustrated, to get frustrated. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and why the program that we're doing here at Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services is so important, because we, like other organizations that are serving refugees around the state, are bridges. So here are some of the challenges, and you can see there's quite a list, and I could have even added more. And I'll just highlight a few of these. One is folks have to receive citizenship within the first 7 years that they're in the United States. But to do that, there's not just a citizenship test, but also folks have to pass English language test, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Chronic disease, physical and mental health is a big one. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. This one I want to call your attention to, because it's not something that we think about. But imagine that you had to flee. You had to leave Utah. You had to leave your home. You had to leave your family. You had to leave your work. You had to leave everything that is familiar. That person at Smith's, at the grocery store, who you see all the time. You know, those touchstones that tell us subtly that we are connected to a place. And people lose that, lose status, identity, social networks, familiar systems, like getting your driver's license. As frustrating as sometimes that is, imagine how it would be in a whole another country. And if you've lived in another country, you've had to get something renewed, it can be overwhelming. Your purpose, your livelihood, property, and access to your pension. Folks that have come from some parts of the world where they've worked as professionals, perhaps they have years and years and years of savings accumulated or pensions accumulated, and they come here often without those financial resources and have to start over again. Okay. And actually, we'll talk about that one later. I was going to say the expectations to care for active grandchildren. And we'll get to that in just a minute, the whole aspect of children and some of the implications of having children here and not here. Okay, physical and mental health. Folks that have been resettled in other countries tend to have some of the same aging issues that everybody else does. But study after study after study has shown that displacement, that process of displacement for however long it is, has an extra impact on people's health, on their physical health. Also, if you've got people that have been in hiding or been away from home for lots of years, or come from places where the medical systems maybe were not as sophisticated as in other places, may have already had pre-existing conditions. What we commonly see here, asthma is the big one, diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure, a lot. In women, I'm noticing with a lot of the women that I'm working with, arthritis, a lot of comments about arthritis when I go to see people. And then also digestive issues. And this is especially true for people that have lived in refugee camps where they may not have been properly nourished over time, or maybe experienced famine before they fled or while they were fleeing. In relationship to displacement, all of the social stresses that we talked about earlier can be exacerbated, especially for women. Whose status may have been lower. They may have lost a husband. They may, in 25 countries, children around the world are not acknowledged through the mother's line, but through the father's line. That can create some problems. So lots of stressors there, and other populations with particular concern to the UN bodies include those with disabilities, those belonging to an ethnic, religious, or linguistic minority who often have received more extreme abuse or violence, and folks from the LGBT community. And this is becoming an increasing population. Then here, before I talked for a minute, in Mohammed's case about Utah Health and Human Rights, they figure that Utah is home to about 50,000 refugees with approximately 17,000 survivors of torture. And they have some statistics. And they've determined that there are some countries in particular, so folks coming from those particular countries, the incidence rates of torture can be higher. This plays out in so many different ways. And it looks like the average client base is increasing for health and human rights. There are also impacts of torture, physical injuries, high incidence of complex mental health issues, especially PTSD. And also another one that we're seeing here locally is broken sleep. I have so many people who I visit that I'm having to figure out how to time my visits because folks stay up all night and then are able to sleep comfortably during the day, or maybe, you know, not available in the afternoon for napping or whatever. But this has implications for how we can best serve the folks that are living in our community. Here's an example. This is part of a partnership that Sharice Jensen has formed with some folks back east, the Center on Aging and Trauma and the Jewish Federation of North America. They're doing some phenomenal work about the impact of trauma and how you work with folks who have experienced trauma, but they work specifically with Holocaust victims, but are also expanding to understand more about refugees and older refugees. So their focus is on folks who are older and how the impact of trauma affects people later on in life, and how those caring for those folks can better understand how to care for them better. And you'll see here some examples: Iraqi special immigrant visa holders, and there are a number of folks in that category here in Utah. Bomb explosions, fireworks, loud noises or voices. You can see that's an issue, not just at the 4th of July or the 24th of July, but in some neighborhoods that are pretty lively. That could be a problem for some folks. For our Congolese refugees, starvation is a really, really big issue. So if you're caring for someone, you go into the home, you may see lots and lots of food that's there. You know, people wanting to make sure that they're going to have what they need. And then also those that have experienced forced migration, moving can be a really traumatic thing. Desire to change. So if you're working with these populations in, say, a senior center, understanding some of the underlying issues that the folks that you're hosting may be experiencing or have experienced could be really important in how you deliver services. Okay, so what do we do? So 4 years ago, through the vision of Sharice Jensen and support from a whole lot of folks here, including Paul and others, the refugee program for older adults was created. And our mission mirrors that of Aging and Adult Services to provide advocacy, social engagement, and access to resources. All of this with the intention to decrease social isolation. That is number one. Everything we do is about that longer term goal. So what services in particular? Okay, so specifically those who are eligible are refugees who live in Salt Lake County, where the majority of refugees in Utah are resettled, who are over the age of 60. We provide short-term case management for clients who have been here from 2 to 5 years, and then information and referral for all refugees. And there are also some other services that Aging and Adult Services provides, like Rides for Wellness, that are available to folks regardless of how long they've been here. This is a short list of what we do, some of what we do, not all of what we do. Senior centers, culturally appropriate food and home delivery, especially during COVID. Transportation, as I just mentioned, transportation and interpretation, ESL citizenship and naturalization, home care, and adult daycare. We have a really exciting project I'm going to share with you. Elder abuse prevention and support services, including senior companion, caregiver, and volunteers. I'm going to start with the senior centers. If you go to the Columbus Senior Center, you will see a picture of this guy, Kita Sunar, a big one on the wall. He was a member there. He has now left Utah, but he says he's from Bhutan. His parents both died when he was young. And he was raised by his grandmother. He spent 20 years in a refugee camp and then came to the US at the age of 60. So we have two groups of people who we can serve. Those who have aged, maybe they've been here for longer and now they're over the age of 60, so maybe they came 10 to 15 years ago. Or they arrived over the age of 60. And there are some similarities and differences between those two groups. But for the purposes of this presentation, we're kind of lumping them together. Bakita says it was a hard transition, a really hard transition. But he discovered the senior center, and there's been a thriving group of folks from Bhutan over the last few years until COVID. And there he was able to connect with other people, to find friends, to exercise, and to help others. And this part here, helping others, comes up again and again and again. So not only do we want to ascertain needs, what do people need, but also what can people give? This is a critical part of helping folks integrate into our community, helping them know how they can reach out and give back in different ways. Okay, some of the activities. This is from Taylorsville, who have hosted a group of folks from parts of Africa. It's a little, mostly Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo, but also we've had folks there from Liberia and Sudan who have joined that group. They have done a number of activities, one of which is the Seeds of Hope, the garden, and we're expanding the garden project to other senior centers this summer. We're really, really excited about that. And really grateful to senior center directors and staff who are working with us to do that. We're hoping to serve a lot more folks in Utah with these gardens, but you can just see the joy there. And what's really important about this interaction right here or up here with the sewing project, it's multifold. One is that people, by going to the senior centers, are having an opportunity to interact with folks from Utah, so with folks outside their home communities. But also, this is a safe place for people to go where they can interact with people who do understand what they've been through. That ability to relate to people that have that shared experience is really a crucial part of the healing process. But also notice here the Seeds of Hope Garden. This was through a grant from AARP, another partner. So this work wouldn't be possible without all kinds of partners throughout the community. I love this picture. I learned later that it was staged, but the opportunity to exercise. So, yeah, maybe they're just hanging out talking, and that's okay too. Whatever it is that people get that helps in healing, that helps to connect, that helps to enhance life and end social isolation is of value. The sewing project, we've got a beautiful video that was created that I wasn't able to share. But this sewing project has done so much, and you'll see a little bit later to the end how important this has been for people to learn new skills, to be able to put their heads into something, to the creative process, to something new. Also, you can't see it very well, but with this garden bed, some of the refugees participated in making those garden beds. And so thinking through the technical aspects of cutting wood, right? Of sewing a seam straight. It's a great place for the brain to go. Okay, we're going to move on. So we received some money for some COVID funds to be able to bridge some gaps. So one is that while some folks, when they're at the senior centers, eat the food that's there, a lot of folks are not comfortable with the food that we have in the United States. And in a lot of communities, families eat together and they try to eat traditional foods as much as possible. So we've become are becoming more aware of the local markets that provide different kinds of rice, for example, or different lentils that you might not find at Walmart or Rancho Market or some of the other well-known grocery stores, Harmon's, although they're all branching out as well. But over here on the left, I have Meals on Wheels, typical meal, and that is always an option to folks. And we have been providing through home delivery fresh fruit and vegetable bags. So that's the primary thing. And then once every few delivery times, we include some staples. So that would include rice. So one of the things that we've learned going back to health issues, is that for a number of our folks who are living with diabetes, parboiled rice is the thing, that they want that parboiled rice. And so being able to be in people's homes and to have them show us what they actually eat was really important, because just left to my own devices and in our general conversations, we would not have known that parboiled rice was something important. This is lentils here. This is Ramadan. Actually, yesterday, Ramadan ended. So for the past month, we've had a lot of people, a lot of our clients who've been fasting during the day, and the lentils are really important for making soups to break the fast. And then also dates, and for Ramadan, for our folks who are observing that, at the very beginning, a month ago, we delivered a box of dates that I actually found at Costco. I was really pleased about that. But people were kind of surprised and thrilled to have the dates. Okay, and you can see her fresh fruits and vegetables. So if you see some crazy lady at Costco on a Friday morning or early afternoon trying to lug a whole bunch of stuff out, that might be me. Okay, transportation assistance, again, rides for wellness. So this is open to anybody. But what we found is that a lot of our refugees have a hard time accessing for lots of different reasons. Of course, language barrier, but there are other reasons. And so we're really working with the case managers at the refugee service organizations to help people practice before they come off of formal case management, which in Utah actually goes for 2 years. In other states, many other states, the majority, in fact, it's 1 year, but in Utah, we've extended to 2 years. But in that soft handoff, as people are coming off of formal case management and they're able to connect with our program so that they don't just fall through the gaps, one of the things that we're exploring is having people begin to practice being able to schedule their own appointments. But in the meantime, how are we adapting? How are we trying to make it easier for folks? So we're doing easier scheduling, more direct scheduling, looking at confirmation call systems. So these have not happened for non-English speakers as far as I can tell. So we're working on that. We're not having people be on a wait list. So for now, I'm kind of the intermediary, but we're hoping to evolve this so people can move more directly to access that service. And then also, this is really cool, another grant through UTA, working with the cab company to identify drivers who speak some of the languages of our refugees. And that's really exciting. Interpretation and translation services, this is so critical, because without the ability to communicate, this affects people's physical health. It affects social isolation. It affects how folks relate to their own family members. It affects everything. But from an organizational point of view, what can we do to help make that bridge so that we can communicate better? Salt Lake County and Aging and Adult Services has contracts with 2 interpretation companies, Linguistica and ComGap. So if you've got materials that you think would be of interest, let us know, because we've got some money to be able to get material translated. To the right here is an example of the service list from Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services, and we've translated this into a number of languages. Now, we have taken big notebooks to our folks so that they can keep all of this information. And truth be told, in a lot of families, nobody really reads the native language. Our older folks may speak it, but they may not read it. And their children, especially grandchildren, will want it in English. And so we provide both. But this is a way to say we respect that that you need to have this information in as many ways as possible. So there's that. And then, yeah. And if you need any help with accessing the interpretation or translation services, let me know. Citizenship and naturalization services. This is so crucial because of that pressure to get citizenship. But before then, to be able to pass the English test. And this is not easy. We've got lots of people who have come from places where they had no access to formal education, who literally, on coming to the United States, are just learning how the hand mechanics of holding a pen or pencil. And then we've got doctors and lawyers and people with many, many, many degrees. And so there are different challenges with different groups of people. But how do we get everyone across that line? The consequences are really high. If people don't pass their citizenship test, they can lose their benefits. And for many of our seniors, those benefits, those social security benefits, are absolutely vital. So lots of volunteer opportunities here. If you're interested or know someone who's interested in working with volunteers or volunteering working with refugees, let me know and we can get you hooked up to a program. And I will add, in our sewing program, one of the really important goals of that was to practice very practical English. And so there in the Taylorsville sewing classes, our folks worked with volunteers on two things in particular: asking and answering questions and initiating conversations. Those are basic skills, but they were able to be done in a fun, kind of low stakes context. Okay, home care, adult daycare, and respite services. So we are just on the brink of partnering with Neighborhood House for adult daycare, and we're so excited about this. We have got a group of women who have come from the DRC, who have arrived within the last 2 years, and because of COVID, really do not know anybody. And you know, this again, this social isolation is really a big thing. Folks who are really fearful during the day. We've got somebody who, when she hears loud noises outside of her apartment, it scares her. She feels it in her heart. That will sometimes result in a 911 call. And so there have been repeated 911 calls because she'll fall. And a lot of that is because of the experiences in the past that she's had. And so by bringing these women together, they have a safe place to be during the day while their adult children are out of the home or their grandchildren are at school. And they are going to be able to get to know each other. We're going to help with transportation with that program. And we've been able to meet, he was a volunteer just working with one of the women who speaks one of the refugee languages, who has now been hired by Neighborhood House. So he'll be providing the transportation and will be with the women during the day. So he'll be a bridge. We're so excited about that. The Senior Companion Program is really critical, and we're really excited to get that up and going. But in this way, we can support some of our low-income refugees in being companions and being able to reach out to folks from their region of the world. And there's some fun combinations, you know, folks who may speak a little French here and a little French there, not either person's main language, but they're able to communicate. And we're really, really excited about that. Really a critical program for our folks. And then caregiver support. And down here, there is the beginning of a page of one of Kathy Nelson's, who will be presenting this afternoon, specifically on the caregiver talking points, who is adapting her series of 24 talking points for our refugee communities, refugee and immigrant communities as well. This is so exciting, and we're working with a group of community health workers who work specifically in different communities to tweak the way questions are asked, the way the material is presented, so that they are relevant. This gets into values, cultural values that don't always change when people move to another country. So one example is that for a lot of our people, it is just out of the question that you would take mom and put her in a home. That is just not part of many cultures' values, that people stay at home, and it is the right responsibility and privilege of the family to care for that adult parent or grandparent. And in fact, we've learned in working with the community health workers that in some of our communities, it's actually the responsibility of the grandchildren. And so now we're talking about bridging generations. And so what adaptations do we need to make for an 11 or 14-year-old who's got the primary responsibility for grandma? So that's also a really exciting project. Okay, elder abuse prevention. And you'll see here when we did our delivery last month, our food and vegetable delivery, well, every time we do that, we distribute some type of material. And here's an example of our county's APS flyer. And we had this translated into a number of languages. And down the road, we're looking at maybe doing some workshops addressing this issue of elder abuse. So for example, is it okay to leave grandma locked in the bedroom when the family leaves for the day? Just like 15 years ago, when we had a lot of folks arriving who didn't understand the concept of child abuse and what appropriate norms are. We're seeing some of that now with our older population of refugees. And so we're looking at finding ways to do education and to help people understand, okay, this is not okay. Okay, I talked earlier about giving back. So the folks in the sewing class were able to make these blankets and deliver them to Primary Children's Hospital. And this is just so important to raise people's self-esteem, but also that goal of connecting with the larger community. Really, really important. This two-way flow. Yeah, and always looking for more opportunities like that. Okay, so if you want to have more opportunities to get to know our refugee populations in Utah, in the next few weeks, you've got a bunch of them coming up. This weekend, starting this weekend, is the Living Traditions Festival downtown, and they've changed the model this year. It will be going on over multiple weekends, a couple of times downtown at Washington Square, but also out at the International Peace Park in a couple of weeks. So go there, you'll get to, it's free. Fantastic food by our local refugee and immigrant communities. There's dancing and music and craft displays. Different groups will have material there. You can meet people. It's a great way to get to know who our neighbors are. Then put this on your calendar, June 14th to the 19th, coming up in just a month. We've got World Refugee Day and a lot of activities planned. Again, some COVID adaptations, but we're really excited about this. And some of this will be virtual as well. So if you've got folks that you're working with or in your family who may not have the physical ability to get up and get out and go to a park, they can join online. Spice Incubator Kitchen is a project both here in Salt Lake County, the Office of New Americans, another really important partner for us, and the IRC, International Rescue Committee, which is one of the refugee resettlement organizations around the world. It's one of the most important in the United States and here in Utah. And this is a phenomenal program where they spend a year or so with folks from other countries and help them not only finesse their food and to share their culture through food, but also making business plans and how to create income, how to generate income through food, whether that's a food truck, that's a catering business, that's a restaurant ultimately. And I'll tell you, I moved here 21 years ago, and the food scene in Utah has increased, has improved significantly in those 21 years, in a large part because of our refugee and immigrant communities. So take advantage of that. You can order a meal every week and take it home and enjoy it with your family. Or like for Mother's Day, they had a special menu. They also have dessert boxes that you can get. Really, really cool program. And then coming up in the summer, the Sunnyvale Farmers Market is a really cool market. Again, IRC and others have joined together to create physical land for farmers to bring not only more traditional styles of farming, but also food, to be able to grow plants and vegetables that they're familiar with, that we might not be familiar with here in Utah. And this is an opportunity to check some things out. And then finally, if you want to get in touch with me, here's my contact information. Just another example of our translated services. This is specifically about the refugee program here at Aging and Adult Services, and we have this again in multiple languages. And with that, I think we have about 10 minutes for questions, discussion, dialogue, and so I'll turn it over to Amy.
All right, if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and put it in the Q&A box.
No questions. I'd love to know where people are from.
We have a fabulous presentation. Thank you.
All right. So we want to thank Sarah for presenting today. It's a great resource. So thank you so much. And we appreciate you participating in this session of the Utah Elder Justice Conference. So the next section, does someone else have a question? Okay, don't want to cut anyone off. So the next sessions will be starting at 11:30, but feel free to reach out to Sarah if you have any more questions or want to connect with her. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.